this is happening at all levels now. This is a tactic that the parties have deemed acceptable, I would say, in this state. And I've seen it from both sides, where you want to paint the fringe leftist as like a socialist or something like that, and then the right gets painted as right-wing Trumper, MAGA, whatever. But we're seeing it at all levels. It used to be that these sort of attacks would really just happen in some of the high-level races, but that's simply not the case. And I think ground zero for nastiness has been some of these school board races. And I want to bring your attention to one in particular. It is the race for Highline School Board Director, District 4. Melissa Petrini is running against Carlos Ruiz. Carlos Ruiz sent out the following flyer about Melissa Petrini. It said on it, and again, I want you to keep in mind, what is the goal here? And I want you to keep in mind how vague this is. It says, conservative leaders and groups are launching bold and aggressive action to take our schools backward. With attacks on students of color and LGBTQ plus youth, they seek to stifle learning about race and identity. They encourage unproven theories that will take us back to the 1950s. Carlos Ruiz goes on in this attack mailer against Melissa Petrini to say, vote Carlos to protect our students from extremist ideology. Don't fall for the squeaky clean image of my opponent. And then he references some video interview she did that we, watched. It doesn't seem terribly controversial. He said, read between the lines in a video she recorded for Political Lens. Like, he's not going to tell you what is so bad about it. He's just read between the lines. And then he says, a mom of 6 children who don't attend Highline schools, no thank you. Highline deserves better. He goes on to say, our kids deserve safe, engaging, and equitable schools, just painting him as the perfect person for the job. Carlos will prioritize a welcoming school environment for all students and their families. Carlos stands for focusing on the whole child, academics, arts, and the social well-being of every student. Hands-on, fact-based curriculum, effective use of school funding, and budgetary transparency, amplifying the voices of students, parents, and educators, collaborative, open discussions, healthy learning environments. So he paints himself to be this really reasonable guy. Yeah, I care about all this, except he's doing something there that proves he's unreasonable. He is doing something with the flyer and saying extremist ideology, launching these vague attacks with these vague labels that he's offering no proof for. He is proving that he's the unreasonable one, not Melissa Petrini. And I got a chance before the show today to chat with Melissa Petrini, and I will tell you, based on our conversation, she is anything but unreasonable. Melissa Petrini, welcome to Undivided.
Thank you for having me, Brandy.
So first, let's talk about who you are as a parent, because I think that's relevant to what you're running for.
Yeah, so I'm a mom of 6 kids. I have 2 with special needs, one on the autism spectrum that is now graduated, and we had a very long road with him, and our youngest with Down syndrome. So we've got kind of those bookends of children with special needs. One child in the middle who had a 504 plan and was one of the reasons that I pulled my children out of the school district a couple years ago. I just felt like she wasn't having her needs met, especially with having a legally binding accommodation plan. So over the past few years and then through COVID, I ended up having all my children home. And so homeschooling more by force, less by choice. And just over the last year and a half, as I've been approaching back to wanting to put my kids back in, kind of what's happening, feeling like, I helped remediate the reading issues that we were having. And, is she ready to get back in? And so we did kind of a hybrid last year where we still did some things at home, let her go to middle school in the district. And halfway through, she actually told me she was taking a science class. She loved the teacher, but she was really dismayed about how the kids were behaving. And she just said, well, Mom, this is actually stuff you and I did last year. And so I'm kind of bored. And
Wow.
So she opted to come back and just finish that class at home. And so but I have another child who's doing hybrid at the same middle school this year, more just to see his friends. But we do all the academic stuff at home until I feel like things kind of start to pick back up and our kids get back on track.
Yeah, and so your kids would be in the Highline School District if you
Yes.
hadn't decided to homeschool
They
them.
were in the Highline School District when we moved here for a year before I pulled them out. So
Yeah. So you just detailed a few of the frustrations that you had and sort of what led you to bring your kids home. But what made you decide, especially in today's climate, as we're about to discuss, to run for school board? Because these races are now that people used to just skim past them, and now they are very high profile.
Mm-hmm. Well, so like I said, I started investigating back into the school district, and then I started getting emails about volunteering and being on different committees. So I put my name in the hat and got on the Highline Health Curriculum Committee to help pick the curriculum that would meet state standards of the new comprehensive sex ed bill. And so I didn't want to be kind of nervous Nancy about, what is being taught, because I hear what other people said and I thought I want to know for myself. So I got on the committee, and it turns out I was the only parent that was on the committee along with other administrators and teachers. So that to me was kind of alarming because it wasn't representative of the community and different people's beliefs and backgrounds and what they would feel about it. But I went in just like, okay, I value what the state law says. I will uphold that and just make sure that parent rights are honored, which it is. It says, it has to, you have the option to opt out. So I wanted to make sure that was honored. And as we went through that process, I just started seeing a lot of great things that I thought, oh, this is amazing. Yes, 95% of this I support, I think should be taught. The other 5%, let's give parents, they should know exactly what's being taught, and then the option to opt out. And this doesn't have to be a political issue. This doesn't have to be divisive. There's a way to help everyone get what they want. And so the more I've been going to these meetings, the more I realized there's just more to be done. And we need more representative voices. And I want to be that one that's more common sense, independent. This is a nonpartisan position. So listening to all. And so that's kind of the main reason.
Common sense independent is not how your opponent is painting you.
Oh, I know. I know.
So I'll just read it again. I had just gone through it for folks, but conservative leaders and groups are launching bold and aggressive actions to take our schools backward with attacks on students of color and LGBTQ youth. They seek to stifle learning about race and identity. First, have you ever attacked students of color or LGBTQ youth?
No, I've never spoken to it. When I say I will represent all students, I actually mean all students. Unlike his flyer that really does alienate and disenfranchise half the voter base who might be, and I know some who are very offended by it, to group and stereotype all people as if you're conservative, clearly you must never have had a child that's gay or trans or a family member. Or if you're conservative, you must not be a person of color. Well, I know lots of people who don't fall into that category. So it turns the whole thing very partisan.
Yeah.
And some people feel like maybe he wouldn't represent them.
Yeah, but it's also okay to just be a white mom who hasn't had a kid that's LGBTQ, who hasn't, who hasn't had a student of color. I mean, that is okay. It's not wrong to be that. He goes on to say, vote Carlos to protect our students from extremist ideology. Don't fall for the squeaky clean image of my opponent. Read between the lines in a video she recorded for Political Lens. Now, we've watched this video. Can you try to help us understand what he's talking about when he's encouraging people to read between the lines?
I don't know. I actually rewatched the video yesterday because it had been a couple months. I'm like, what did I say that was so controversial? I don't like watching myself on video. I don't know. I mean, maybe just that I allude to that there are families who don't want certain things pushed or taught. I mean, that's the place of the family to teach beliefs and, to affirm identities. That's where that belongs, in my opinion. And so that's why some people send their kids to church. Some kids send their kids to sports and different camps to balance out and round out their children. And so as partners, we should be working together. And if there's a lot of parents who are saying, hey, I don't feel comfortable with this, and then that should be honored. We should be accommodating those children as well.
What kind of things do you think shouldn't be taught as part of a curriculum but should be optional for parents?
Well, in talking about the sex ed curriculum, correct? There is that state law saying that a parent can opt out because that does sometimes cross the line on some people's beliefs. I spoke to an Ethiopian mosque a couple weeks ago. Those people felt like that was a huge violation of their beliefs, and sex and gender is so integral to what they believe, and so many of them have pulled their children out and homeschool and had just said they felt forgotten. And we have a larger population of refugees coming here, people of different faiths and backgrounds, that a lot of these things don't quite line up with what they're thinking, and they need their voices heard. So when I was on that committee, I said, this committee should not be making a recommendation without those voices in the room, and they're not here.
Yeah. So for you, I guess, to see this flyer that it's so vague in nature. You know, it has these kind of vague connotations that you're this extremist, racist, homophobic, transphobic person. I imagine that it has to bother you.
I laughed at it actually, and
Good,
then I was
good.
like, let's have some fun with this because if the worst thing he can come up with is that I'm squeaky clean, then I put that on my Facebook. I'm like, well, vote squeaky clean. Like, what is the alternative to that? And if he wants to elude and lead people in direction to, because he can't say it, otherwise that would be slander, to call me a white supremacist or racist or homophobic. He doesn't have the receipts to back that up. And anyone who knows me knows that I'm very fair, I'm very balanced, I'm a lover of all people. And so I hope that people who have given me that time to sit on my couch or on their doorstep or whatever have found that I am not those things, and people from all spectrums. And I'm getting those people to write, hey, I sat down with her. I'm a anti-racist, educator, and she is not these things. And hey, I'm a teacher, and I've sat down with her. She is not these things. And so I know it's part of the game, and it's unfortunate because we're talking about our kids, and we're supposed to be the best example by not bullying each other. And so I don't know what to say to that. I'm just not playing that game. So
Such a good answer, Melissa. It's such a good answer. And I guess is this the first office that you've run for?
yes,
First time you've
it
been
is.
on a ballot. So the experience that you've been through and seeing mailers like this, how does it maybe change the way that you'll approach how you research candidates in the future personally?
Oh, I mean, I'm a political junkie by
Yeah.
nature, so I definitely one of those people that reads the voter pamphlet, which I still have not received mine, and I've heard a couple other people haven't. So it's kind of frustrating, but I do read them and I do look at who are they endorsed by. That kind of tells me a lot of things because then you can go to those websites and see what they stand for. They're also trying to wrap me in with, so I have taken no endorsements, I've accepted no money from any party, political organization, union, nothing. If you go to my PDC website, you can see I'm solely funded by myself and individuals from this area. They are parents, teachers, community members, local small businesses. Unlike my opponent or the other candidates that are highly funded by their parties, their organizations, and their unions. And so that should tell you something, that I am running because I want to represent the people that care and that it really impacts. And I think that's a threat to some people because that shows that I can't be controlled.
Yeah. Well, let's end with this, Melissa. For other parents, and I hear from so many of them who are frustrated with the state of our public education system, but they're scared to jump in for reasons like this. They don't want to be subjected to attacks like this. They don't want their neighbors getting flyers like this, painting them as an extremist, in the mail. What would your message be to those parents?
They need to take a stand. I had someone who said, how come all this stuff is happening now? Why are we having to fight this now? And it said, well, because people didn't get in the game back when it was being talked about. Now these things are law. Now these things are policy. And a lot of this can't be undone, and it's really unfortunate, but it's still, this is talking about our kids' education. This is a 5-alarm, 5-star alarm. We should be, I don't know why that is a political thing to say. I want strong academics for my kids. I want them to come out with that basic foundation so that they can build upon that and to be able to read. I mean, that's the most basic building block we have. And there's lots of statistics and data out there that we are not doing a good job once kids reach 4th and 5th grade. Those reading strategies of looking at a picture or looking at cues and sight words, if they don't learn how to phonetically sound it out themselves, then those bigger words in the later grades, they can't do it. And that was my experience with my daughter. She constantly kept guessing words. And I was like, what are you doing? And it took me years to get her to learn those spelling rules and why a word sounds a certain way. So I'm not sure why that's such a political thing for me to point out. And that's what I've been running on: strong academics, sound and fair policies that are good for all, and making sure that students are supported by teachers and parents working together and collaboratively, doing the best we can to help our kids with their mental health. I don't know why that's such a political thing.
It shouldn't be. It's
So,
only
I,
political to people who are on the far fringes. Melissa Petrini, you're going to be on the ballot next Tuesday for Highline School Board Director position 4. Good luck to you, and thank you for caring enough to run. I know it's a difficult time to do that.
thank you. Thank you for having me.
So there you have it. I mean, she seems like a genuinely nice person, not some crazy extremist. And that's why, well, what do I always say about flyers? Campaign flyers? What do I always tell you? You get them in the mail, and then you put them in the recycling. Mail, recycle, not the trash, recycling.